Yes, I will start letting people in.
And then we can get started. Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Fairfax County Police Town Hall. We're going to get started in a minute. There's thunderstorms rolling through the area, so people are having some delay in joining. I ask that you stay on mute, and we'll get started here in a few minutes. So thank you for joining us.
All participants are now in listen-only mode.
Here we go. So thank you, everyone, for joining. We're going to start here in just a few minutes. We're giving people opportunity to join. We just opened up the bridge. So community, families, children, kids, athletes, students are joining. Please give us a minute and we'll start very shortly. So thank you for joining us this evening.
Of course, somebody just emails me and said, "Oh, my link is broke." Captain, I just unmuted you also.
Good evening. Thank you. Appreciate it.
By about 15 minutes ago, so that would be this female about 40 years old, wearing trash bags over her clothing.
Hey, Roland, nice to see you.
For about 3 days. Wanted to pull out their check, but the rocks in Walmart, thank you.
Oh, they're rolling in.
All right.
Hold on, let me send this link out. Just give me 30 seconds.
All right. Good evening, everyone. We're about to start in less than a minute. We still have folks joining. So just give us a few seconds and we will get started here. So again, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Make sure that everybody who should be unmuted is unmuted.
Okay. Let's do it.
Let's get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our version of The Talk. Fairfax County Police led The Talk. The reasoning behind this was because of the current state of the United States and the current event, and we were taking the climate of everything that was going on, and we had a thought that our young people need to be engaged with the police officers in their area. They need to be trusting of the police officers of their area, and the officers need to be trusting of those in that area. After many discussions with the Fairfax County Community Affairs leader, we've come to this. We've met extensively several times, And the goal for this talk tonight is for greater understanding of the relationships between the police and the community. Any type of active stops, we want everything to be positive. We want all interactions to be positive and stay positive. And we wanted to create a forum to where anyone could ask questions, so that we have a very interactive relationship with who we're dealing with. We believe that in this case, the positive familiarity is going to bring the contempt that we want. So as I turn it over to Scott Woods, he's going to lay the groundwork, and let's get started.
So thank you, Will. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the virtual town hall with Fairfax County Police. We have officers and leaders from the from the Franconia station that serves our area of Hayfield, Edison High School, Lee High School, and our surrounding communities, Kingstown, Rose Hill, and Hayfield Farms, et cetera, all the way up through Route 1 up into South County. I want to take a few minutes right now to set sort of the ground rules for tonight's discussion. So number one, our intent this evening is not to bash Fairfax County Police, but we want to foster an interactive discussion so we can foster transparency, accountability, community relationships, and respect between our local officers and the community in which they serve. All right. Number two, our kids need this information. The families need this information so that they know how to govern themselves and their actions. Number three, we anticipate additional opportunities to further these conversations with Fairfax County Police. So this is not the last time that we're going to have these discussions. We welcome create an environment where we can foster trust with each other. And then we ask that you listen, absorb the information, ask your questions. And again, the goal is to have open, honest, frank dialogue, okay? We'll have question and answer period that will follow after the officer's presentation. But if you have a pressing question during an officer's presentation or remarks, we'll pause to make sure that you will get your question asked and answered. So you can do it two ways. You can submit it by chat, but if you have a question in the chat and you really want to address it with one of the officers, we'll go ahead and pause and allow you to unmute, and then you can ask your question. So let's begin tonight's program. So first we have Master Police Officer Eric Nelson, who's the Community Affairs Liaison for the Franconia District Station. He has over 35 years of law enforcement experience, 26 years with the Fairfax County Police. And next we'll have Officer Issa Martin, who's a Fairfax County Traffic Enforcement. He has over 18 years of law enforcement experience, 5 years with the Fairfax County Police. And then we have Officer Trevor Jones, who's a new officer, 1 year on the beat here in Franconia District. And he's going to give his perspectives as he works this district as well, and his perspectives from a young officer. And then we're joined by Captain Gregory Freed, who's the district commander for the Fairfax station. He has almost 17 years of law enforcement experience, and he's been on 2 years serving as the captain of the Franconia District Station. So with that said, Officer Nelson, I will kick it over to you. Welcome all of the Fairfax County officers from the Fairfax stations to this evening's program. Officer Nelson.
Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Scott, for bringing this to my attention and finding me out to set this all up tonight. And I appreciate the captain giving us the opportunity to do it here at the station. As you pointed out, yes, I have 26 years of Fairfax County as an officer, 3 years as a federal police officer, and 7 years as a military police officer. So you can see my desire to serve and protect and help is something I always wanted to do. I was born in the South with the mindset of wanting to do better. The age of driving. It was the stress and the excitement of driving. You have studied the manual, you have passed the test, You have your license. At that point now, you feel that you have achieved the rite of passage. You got the keys to the car now. For me, my first car was a 1976 Oldsmobile 98, big long stretch car, where you guys now get the fancy bright sports cars. But that's not the issue. The issue is once we got the keys to the car, you know everything about the roads and the highway, so we think. You can handle anything that comes to you that we thought. I thought so too until I had to talk with my father and grandfather. The conversation was words to live by. Conversation was not a secret, but it was a needed talk and we needed to hear it. It ones where some had privilege, didn't have to have this talk. But with me growing up in the South, my father and grandfather thought I needed to have this talk. They need to have the talk with me to explain to me, once you get this license, what comes and entails with it, how you to conduct yourself out here in the streets. And the first thing they told me is to remember, racism speaks louder than words. It can be overt, it can be hidden. I remember my father telling me riding in the car with him and a police officer pulls up behind him. We all get that little paranoid feeling. Do not look back, he would say. Do not say anything, sit still. Because we did not want to give the officer a reason to pull us over. So at that time, you never understood why until you had that talk, until you start living and seeing why he said that to me. My father would say, he's going to pull me over. I know he will. It's that time of the month. He's looking for quotas because I'm black, because he's having a bad day. These are some of the anticipation, the panic, and the nervousness that he showed me and he explained to me when I first started driving. We all going to experience things in different ways. The ticket was not the big deal. The big deal was staying alive. So my father would ponder, what did I do? The same thing we all go through when we get pulled over. What did I do? The responsibility, was it a conscious decision I made to speed, a conscious decision to run the stop sign, or was this an honest mistake that I just didn't pay attention to? So we pondered those ideas and decisions. So my father said, when you get pulled over, it was not if you get pulled over, it was when you get pulled over, is to make sure that others see you. Make sure you are seen. Back in my father's day and early days, we didn't have the luxury of the cameras and the videos that you guys have today. So if you were to get pulled over, no one knew about it. No one even know where you were. But we have the luxury of videos and cameras these days. So what I'm going to talk about now is be prepared. Be prepared for that approach of that officer coming up to your vehicle. My father would say to me, use your God-given sense. Do not behave like a fool. Be respectful. Yes, sir. No, sir. It's just showing respect to the other person. It's not making you weak, but giving the respect. He will also say, do not contempt the cop. Meaning, do not upset the police officer. Do not give him or her a reason to arrest me or things going awry. Make eye contact. It's very important. Is to look someone in the eye, show the respect. Do not reach for anything in a vehicle. A key one is turn down your radio. down your window. And another key factor is instruct your passengers. Allow you to do all the talking, because it's amazing how everybody wants to chime in, but you are the responsible one behind the wheel. You are the one that will be accounted for it. Keep your hands in plain view. That goes the same with your passengers. At nighttime, turn on the inside light of your vehicle to shine the vehicle so you can see that there's nothing going on in the vehicle. The key is to make it home safely. The same with the officer. He wants to make it home safely as well. Not everyone's going to be treated the same. Not everyone is painted with the same brush. Not all circumstances are the same. Just be safe, arrive home safely, arrive to your destination safely by using, as fathers say, your God-given sense. Any issues that come up during that traffic stop or during this approach, it can be dealt with at a later time. From what I just led you up to is now we have the approach of the officer, which is going to lead into Officer Martin explaining to you what happens now. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Everyone's good? Great. So I just wanted to piggyback off of what NPO Nelson just spoke of. My primary job is to enforce traffic code. I write about 200 tickets a month on average. I do about 10 to 12 a day. And that may sound like a lot, but it's really, it's not that much. It's not that many. I could probably write a lot more. I use a lot of discretion. But one of the biggest things that I want to just kind of drive home is that my goal is the same exact goal as the driver, is to go home at the end of the night. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that you guys aren't aware of, especially when it comes to traffic stops. It's so very important and so dangerous for police officers. And so I know there's a lot of, I get questions all the time. Why do you guys do this? Why do you guys do that? So I want to kind of try to shed some light on why it is that we angle our cars in a certain way. Why is it that we touch the back of the trunk when we pull people over? Why do we shine the lights in the car? It's a reason for everything. And 9 times out of 10, the reasons for my safety as well as yours. Okay, so my traffic stop begins well before I actually pull the vehicle over. Once I see the infraction, or once I see what we call reasonable suspicion. And for all you guys, all the teenagers out there, these are some terms that I would challenge you guys to look up and do a little bit more research on. Reasonable suspicion, probable cause. Okay, those are 2 words that are very important. All I need for a traffic stop is what's called reasonable suspicion, which means a hunch, a gut, that something may not be right. I like to make the majority of my traffic stops with probable cause, which means that I have seen an infraction of a code, of a state or local code. So again, my traffic stop starts well before I turn my lights on. Once I see the infraction, the first thing I do is start observing the passengers and the driver. I want to look at their behavior. I want to see if they notice me behind them. I want to see how they react if they see me. And I want to see how they react once I turn on my emergency equipment. All of these things are individually, it may not be that important, but when you put all these things together, they kind of tell a story, okay? It's my job to distinguish between someone being nervous and someone who's trying to actively hide something from me. So once I see the infraction, I'm looking at everyone's head, body posture, everyone in the car. Once I pull the car over, once I activate my lights and the car pulls over, and I angle my car in a position where if my vehicle gets hit by another car, it won't hit me, nor will it hit the car in front of me, okay? I also turn my spotlight on. Again, that's for my safety as well as your safety, so everyone around us can see, okay? I also try to take as much of the lane as possible. So I know you guys, I know I get a lot of questions. Why do you guys why do you guys park? Why do you guys take half of the lane? That's for everyone's safety. My car is lit up like a Christmas tree, okay? So I want everyone to see us. So I take as much space up as possible just so we can remain safe, okay? So once I get out my vehicle, I already know who the registered owner is, and I also know if that registered owner is licensed, if he has a warrant for his arrest, if he has a concealed weapon permit, if he has a protective order. There's a lot of information. Now, this is all happening within seconds. So I have to look at this return, try to figure out who it is I'm dealing with, on top of keeping my eyes on the car and make sure that no one in the car is doing anything bad. What I like to do, I do every traffic stop exactly the same to the best of my ability. I say exactly the same thing. Our general orders tell us that we shall introduce ourselves and we shall tell you why we pulled you over. So it's not like you see on TV, hey, do you know why I pulled you over? It's not a guessing game. We're not on television. So the first thing that I do is right after I transfer my latent print on the back of the vehicle, and I'll explain why I do that in a second, I go to either the driver's side or the passenger side, depending on what it is that I feel is safest, okay? All while looking at the occupants in the car. Now, this is when it gets really tricky, really scary, and bad things happen. Because when I approach the window, I have no idea if you're angry with me. I have no idea who you are. I have no idea what your last experience was with law enforcement. I don't know if you had a bad day at school, a bad day at work, if you had an argument with your spouse. I pulled you over to explain to you why or what you did that may have been dangerous, not only to yourself, but to the rest of the public, okay? So after I introduce myself and I explain to you guys what it is why I pulled you over, the next thing I'm gonna do is ask for your license and registration, okay? What I suggest, or what I would think would be very helpful, if you have questions, feel free to ask the questions after you get the license and after you get your registration, okay? If you disagree with why I pulled you over, the side of the road is not the courtroom, okay? You are not guilty. And I want to make that clear. You are not guilty just because I give you a citation, okay? What I'm telling you is that I have enough evidence, I have enough probable cause to say that you violated X, Y, and Z. You have a court date. Every ticket that I give, you are allowed to go to court. That's your day to shine, okay? Arguing or being confrontational on the side of the road will never, ever, ever end well, okay? I don't say that because I'm a police officer. I have an adult child that's in college, and I have 2 younger children. I've been telling my children since they were old enough to understand, police and firemen and first responders are your friend. They're there to help, okay? We're human. We make mistakes. If you feel like a mistake was made, the correct actions will be to make sure you have my business card, make sure that you have my contact information, and you contact the station or you can contact me, okay? But to be confrontational on the side of the road is a very dangerous thing. Once I receive your driver's license, remember I told you before I get out the car, I know who the registered owner is. So what if the registered owner is not driving a vehicle, right? Now, that's why I have your driver's license. I then tell everyone that's in the vehicle, remain in the car, and just keep your hands where I can see them, okay? Any type of movements that we look at as, we call them furtive movements. And I want you guys, you younger guys, to write that down also. It's called a furtive movement. That's a movement that I think that you're making, that you're either hiding something or you're reaching for something or you're doing a movement that's not natural to the traffic stop, okay? That furthers my probable cause to be able to do more on the traffic stop, if that makes sense, okay? If everyone is in the car, especially for you young drivers, you are responsible for your vehicle. If you have 4 people in the vehicle, you're responsible for everyone in that vehicle. So like MPO Nelson said, the driver, you need to make sure that you tell everyone in the vehicle, hey guys, just be quiet and let me talk, okay? I know how it is when you guys are with your friends, you know, egos get involved and It's hard to say no when you're with your friends. I totally understand. Prior to me becoming a police officer, I was a juvenile probation officer for 15 years. So I spent a lot of time with juveniles in the schools and outside of school. So I get it. I understand. And believe it or not, I was a teenager at one point, a long time ago. We had horses and carriages. We didn't have cars back then. That was a joke. Okay. So once I received your driver's license, I go back to my car and I verify everything is correct. At that point, that's when I decide if I write a ticket, contrary to what people believe. I don't know if I'm gonna write you a ticket when I pulled you over. You may have a valid excuse. If I pulled you over for not maintaining your lane, if I pulled you over for speeding, no matter what the infraction is, I have a lot of discretion. So once I hear what your reasoning is, I go back to my car and I make a decision. Do I give you a ticket or not? If I give you a ticket, I'll write the summons and I'll come back to the car with the summons in my hand, okay? And this is another key point that I want you guys to understand. It is not an option not to sign a ticket, okay? The ticket is not an admission of guilt. It's a promise that you're either gonna prepay the fine or you're gonna come to court. You have to sign the ticket. Because if you don't sign the ticket, that allows me to do more on the traffic stop, like place you under arrest. I can actually remove you from the car and I can place you under arrest for obstruction of justice. And guess what? When you go to the magistrate, guess what's gonna happen? You're gonna sign a ticket. You know, so, but now it's gonna cost you more money. I have to tow your vehicle. No one wants that, guys. The primary purpose, what I love so much about traffic enforcement is that it's education. For me, it's education first. I know I write a lot of tickets, but I promise you that I give more warnings and I give more education on what it is that you did more than the ticket writing. We don't have a number. Quotas are illegal in Fairfax County. Okay, we do not. I know what everyone says at the end of the month, you have to get your numbers. My supervisor is on this meeting, Captain Freed, and he can attest to it. He does not give me a number to meet. As a matter of fact, Captain Freed cannot even tell me to write a ticket. No one can tell me to write a ticket. No one can tell me to make an arrest, okay? This is completely up to me, okay? So there's no such thing as, I'm not gonna say no such thing as quotas, but quotas are illegal within Fairfax County, okay? Once I give you the ticket, I tell you, you have to sign the ticket. This is not an option, guys. This is where things get really, really sticky. This is where the power and the power struggle comes into play, okay? And I would guarantee you that every time law enforcement will win because the law is on our side. And we do not want to engage in that power struggle. That's not our goal, okay? So one of the biggest things that I want you guys to really understand is that just like you guys have a lot on your mind on a traffic stop, you guys are probably nervous, scared, angry, confused. I do my best to try to settle those anxieties. But understand, we have more things, the officers, and we're trained, and this is not a soft show, we're trained to be able to make these split-second decisions. But there's a lot that's going on that you guys don't know about. One last thing before I conclude, I'll get a lot of questions. How come there's always 2 officers or 3 officers on a traffic stop? Those officers aren't there for you. They're there for me. They're there for my protection. So if I'm on a traffic stop and there's another officer that comes up, he's just there to protect me. Because like I said, if there's 3 or 4 people in the vehicle, there's only one of me, guys. I'm not Superman. I'm not a superhero. So that officer is there observing. He's not there to antagonize. He probably won't even say anything to you, more than likely. He's there to observe, to make sure that I'm safe. It has nothing to do with your race, your creed, your color, or the actual offense, okay? Our biggest thing, guys, is officer safety. I know it may look completely different. I know that the things that you guys are seeing on TV look really, really bad. And guys, some of it is really bad. I'm not gonna lie to you. Some of it is bad. Some of it I don't even consider police work. However, some of it is police work. And you know, use of force is ugly. Having people forcibly comply is ugly. That's the last thing that I ever want to do. Before I start my shift, after I do all of my inspections, I say a prayer for myself. I say a prayer for my co-workers, and I hit the street running. And, you know, at that point, I want to go home at the end of the night, just like you guys want to go home after the traffic stop. So that's it, pretty much for my traffic stop. The one thing that I just want to continue to reinforce, guys, listen, the traffic stop is a very short interaction with law enforcement, okay? We do not get paid more for arguing. We don't get paid more for tickets. I can write 200 tickets a month. I can write 1 ticket a month. I still get paid in coupons and Popeyes. That's what I get paid in, guys. They don't pay us anything. Another joke. Okay, bad joke. my salary does not increase based on the amount of tickets that I write, okay? So that concludes my portion. So I guess I turn it over to Officer Jones.
Before we go to Officer
Before we
Jones,
do that, yeah, go ahead, Will.
Officer Martin, I fielded a couple of questions and I wanted to give you a chance to answer them.
Absolutely.
That have came through a couple of times. One was, can you explain to people where they should pull over and how they should pull over if they don't feel comfortable pulling over on a dark road? The second is, does everyone in the car have to give up their ID to the police officer, even the passengers sitting in the back seat? The third is, in this age of videotaping everything, how would you suggest that they position their phones when and where to videotape the stop?
All great questions. So the first question, where should you pull over? Always pull to the right. Always pull over to the right. Never stop in the lane of travel if it's possible. So I said at the beginning that, you know, my car has a lot of lights. It has a lot of lights for a reason. The lights are to protect and let everyone know that we're pulled over. And that's also another reason why we have a second officer come. Because if where you pull over is unsafe, I realize it's unsafe. So what I'll do before I even get out of my vehicle, I'll ask dispatch to start me another unit to assist with traffic control, okay? If you want to continue to drive to an open parking lot or a well-lit area, stay at a low speed. I recommend maybe throw your hazard lights on to let me know that I see you. But I would rather for you to just stop and pull over right where you are. Even though it's super, super dark, I have lights, I have a spotlight. I'll ask for other units. You will be safe. But again, if you feel that unsafe, pull over into a parking lot. I'm totally okay with that. And then when I get after I introduce myself, you can explain to me, officer, I saw you behind me, but I didn't feel safe pulling over. Communication is the key, guys. I'm not a dictator. You know, I'm a human being. I've been pulled over before and I've been terrified, you know, and I get it, you know, it's human. So yes, always pull over to the right, never pull over to the left, okay? And never stop completely in the lane of travel. As far as the cell phone, I'm more than welcome. Listen, guys, record me. You know, I'm one of the few that, we're not one of the few. I'm in the minority. I encourage body cams. I like cameras. I want as much video as possible because I know that I do all of my traffic stops exactly the same. And if it makes you feel safer to record me, so be it. It is not illegal to record an officer. It's only illegal if you interfere with their investigation, okay? Meaning that if I'm on a traffic stop, okay, you cannot put the phone out the window in my face and stop me from doing my investigation, okay? A lot of people have their phone mounted on the windshield or on the vent. You can put it in your lap, okay? 9 times out of 10, if the phone is in your lap faced up and I'm at the window, you're gonna catch my face. You're definitely gonna catch my voice, okay? So if you wanna record, you can keep it mounted on the windshield, on the vents. Remember, less movement, the better. Because I don't know who I'm pulling over. There's a lot of people who do not like police officers. Police officers get killed at a very high rate on traffic stops and domestic violence calls, okay? Very, very, very high rate, okay? So I'm looking, like I said at the beginning, I wanna go home, okay? So I'm gonna always err on the side of caution. So if you're reaching and trying to manipulate your phone after I'm giving you instructions and you're not following instructions, okay, I'm gonna be safe. I'm gonna make sure I'm safe. And as far as the IDs in the vehicle, yes, I have the authority to identify everyone in the vehicle. Everyone in the vehicle, I have the authority to identify. Does not mean you're getting a ticket. It does not mean that you've done anything wrong. However, as a passenger, you can get a traffic ticket, even though you're not driving. Seatbelts, open containers. None of you guys should have open containers, alcohol containers anyway, unless you're over 21. But I can still give passengers of vehicles traffic tickets, even though they're not driving. So yes, you must identify yourself if we ask.
If I can add on to, in reference to pulling over, if it's not a safe spot for you to pull over, put your flashers on. At least let the officer know you acknowledge that he's trying to get you to pull over, but you're trying to pull to a safe location. With that officer seeing your flashers on, it gives him the indication that you're not trying to get away from him or her. You're just trying to acknowledge, I see you, and I'm just trying to get to someplace safe. And the question I see about, where do I put my hands? You can put your hands on the steering wheel. Just keep it in plain view that he can see or she can see your hands, that you have nothing in your hands. Okay.
Thank you, Officer Nelson.
Can I add just one more thing? I'm sorry, go ahead. Yes. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll let you finish. I have another follow-up before we continue.
Yes. So I read a question about, do you have to ID yourself if you did not commit a crime? Or so again, I'm gonna answer that with a question, and I hate doing that. So if you feel like you didn't commit a crime and you feel like you don't have the answer, how do you know you didn't commit the crime? How do you know what crime? If I'm investigating a crime, right, and I ask for an ID, and you say no because I didn't commit a crime, and I'm telling you I'm here to investigate a crime, that's when bad things happen. Does that make sense? Whoever asked that question.
Can I add one thing to reference? It goes along with the, where do you put your hands? When you're stopped during the day versus at night, those are two different dynamics. And I know it may have been mentioned briefly earlier, but I would strongly suggest, if stopped at night, I do it when I've been pulled over before in the evening. I turn on the interior light, you know, that when the officer approaches the vehicle, a traffic stop, as they mentioned already, is very dangerous. But then whenever you have the interior light on that and the hands on the steering wheel, that I will say likely will relax the officer's position right away. So that's something to consider, so they can see inside the vehicle at night as well.
Thank you. I just have a follow-up. We're getting some questions in the chat. But Officer Martin, you had mentioned that you have a certain amount of officer discretion. Can you talk a little bit about what elements go into your discretion of whether or not to, pursue a stop, to finish a stop, to write a ticket, to issue a warning? In this area, we have a lot of kids, particularly at the high schools here, who are new to driving, first-time drivers. Maybe they have a car, maybe access to their parents' car. How does that factor into your discretion as you patrol this district? Thank you.
Certainly. So, like I said before, I kind of have a unique perspective. Like I said, I've worked as a juvenile probation officer for the majority of my life, and my career, I'm sorry. And I've had juveniles on probation for driving infractions. I also know how reckless and how dangerous some juveniles are behind the wheel. Okay, so my discretion with the juveniles, depending on the infraction, if I pull a juvenile over for running a stop sign, okay, as opposed to going 15, 20 miles over, okay, both of them are really, really, really dangerous, okay, and could potentially be fatal. What I base my discretion on is when I come to the car, after I have a conversation with that juvenile, if I see that they're distracted, if I've actually had traffic stops where I'm at the window and the teenager still has their cell phone in their hand on Snapchat and texting while I'm walking up to the car. That tells me right there that they're not taking this seriously. They may not be responsible enough to be driving, and they need a harsher consequence than me telling them, hey, don't do X, Y, and Z again, okay? As opposed to if I go to a traffic stop and the juvenile is saying, hey, you know, officer, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't know I did that. And I don't need an apology. You know, I'm no one's judge. I'm not looking for an apology. I'm just looking to see if you are aware and if you can be accountable for your actions. You know, if you have two kids in a car and there's a lot of distraction, you know, and everyone is mouthing off, you know, a warning may not be there. So to answer your question, you know, discretion for any officer all is up to that particular officer. My discretion is different from MPO Nelson. MPO Nelson has been a police officer just as long as I've been alive, okay? So that long. So his discretion is way different from my discretion. I do have a couple of traffic infractions that are my pet peeves. You know, seatbelts are one of them. Car seats are another. I don't give any discretion on the car seat at all. Zero. None. Your child needs, if you put a seatbelt on, your child needs to be in a car seat. You don't get any discretion. I don't give any discretion on reckless driving. Okay. So to answer your question, what goes into my discretion, it's what goes into my personality, what goes into what I feel can be corrected with a conversation, as opposed to a harsher consequence. There are certain traffic offenses that I shall write a ticket for, and majority of them are all misdemeanors, and licenses, suspensions, revocations, things of that nature. But other than that, you know, I don't have to write any tickets. You know, the discretion is arbitrary. It's up to that particular officer and what the officer is comfortable with.
Okay, thank you. I see Officer Nelson is replying to a lot of questions in the chat, but I want to keep it going and keep it moving. We can come back. Officer Nelson, if you can continue to answer questions. I know there's some questions in the chat room about body cameras, about officer training. I know Captain Freed, is on his way up. But Officer Jones, you're up next. And I think Captain Freed is gonna wrap us up talking about the oversight requirements and the training. I think that will be a good idea to wrap that up with the captain. But Officer Jones, if you can join and just share with participants this evening your perspective as a new officer, some of the things that you see patrolling this district, not only with our students, but with the general community as well. So thank you, Officer Jones.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that introduction. So as he introduced me, I'm Officer Jones of Fairfax County Police Department. I'm new here. Just hit the street here very recently. Born and raised here in the state of Virginia, and my father was a cop as well. My father, he shared his experiences with me as a young man, growing up as a young black man in Virginia, which is still in the South. He shared his experiences with me, some of which were not friendly. Some cops were not friendly to him where he grew up. But that encouraged him to pursue change, and same for me as well, which is a reason why I joined here at Fairfax County, which is one of the most diverse departments that you'll find in this Commonwealth, as well as one of the most accepting and inclusive. When it comes to the traffic stop, keep in mind the traffic stop is probably the most dangerous situation we're going to be faced with as officers on a day-to-day basis. As mentioned before, a lot of the things we look for on traffic stops are your movements, the way you position your car, the way you respond to the situation, not only from your passengers inside and how you're acting inside, but like how are you going to respond to our commands? So we look that you listen to us, that you just wait for our commands and you be patient with us. Because ultimately, if you're patient with us, we're going to be patient with you. The number one objective that I have and that all officers here at Fairfax County have is my safety and your safety on a traffic stop. We're on the side of a road, a situation where things can go bad really quickly if people aren't listening or reaching for things. Just keep your hands in plain view and play it cool. Just use your common sense. As I mentioned, Fairfax is one of the most diverse departments that you're going to come in contact with. All of the officers that you meet here, I can assure you, are understanding. but do realize that there are still officers on this department and across this Commonwealth who may struggle to relate to you or me or to you or people who may have a similar skin color. Be patient with the officer, and I guarantee you, at least here in Fairfax County, the officer is going to be patient with you. As I mentioned before, your safety is the number one thing. Like I said, my father, he encouraged me. I'm going to try and keep it short and sweet. He encouraged me to be the change. Growing up, he experiences some racism here in the South, same as me as well, being the son of a black man and a white mother. And that was a thing that was kind of looked down upon growing up. But, you know, that's one of those things I tried to overlook. And one of the reasons why I joined this department is that it's very inclusive. So all the officers here at Fairfax, I guarantee you every last one of them have your interests at heart. The number one thing I want to leave with you, obviously, is play it cool. Keep your hands in plain view. Listen to my commands. Just be patient to me, and I'll be patient with you. And your safety is my number one priority. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. We're still getting questions in, but I want to give the captain an opportunity to jump in here and talk about officer oversight and training and community complaints and how he handles community complaints and the processes by which the community can expect accountability, not only from officers in the Franconia district, but as well as officers within the Fairfax County Police Department. So, Captain Freed, if you're on,
Yep.
You are up next. Thank you very much.
I am here, and I'll try to be quick because there are a lot of great questions, and maybe I can hit some of them as I go through. But as you'd mentioned, I've been the commander here for 2 years. We are one of 8 district stations in the Fairfax County Police Department. We cover approximately 51 square miles. Each district station has a captain, a commander, a lieutenant, and an assistant commander, and then first line supervisors. We have approximately 170 sworn civilian and volunteer staff at just our district station. The department has an guiding mission and vision, and also at the Franconia district station, we have our own mission and vision, and then guiding principles which we live by. You know, I'm a huge advocate and supporter, and you know, I stress to the officers at our station community policing. I think it is excellent to establish these relationships. I think it makes us stronger as a community together, and to have a equally greater understanding as to what's going on, because everyone's going to be safe. And it's been mentioned many times here tonight, you know, everybody wants to go home safe at the end of the night. The community does, the officers do as well. So I think that's the critical piece here to remember. So as the station commander, I have a second lieutenant and a sergeant that are the first line supervisors. They conduct monthly audits of our in-car video camera footage of the officers. So each police cruiser in the county has an in-car video mounted in the dashboard of the cruiser. 3 of our 8 district stations currently have body-worn cameras. The Board of Supervisors recently requested an expedited implementation of the remaining district stations, and that'll likely be completed in the next fiscal year, which will outfit the rest of the patrol district stations, and then the following year, the rest of the department. Some of the questions there, we have a body-worn camera SOP, which is being transitioned to a general order. And, you know, all of our policies are available. All of our general orders are available online for anyone to review and look at. You know, when the discussion and the murder happened in Minneapolis at George Floyd, I had sent out our use of force policy to seek feedback and have conversation and dialogue with many folks in the community. And we've had that to be able to answer questions. So with that, with the policy with the body-worn camera, it is very explicit when an officer shall turn it on, keep it on, and then it also outlines times when it should not be on. If you're in a private residence and somebody asks you to turn it off outside of a criminal investigation, then you can turn it off. Sensitive cases involving victims or in hospitals, you know, those are times as well that it can be turned off. But any interaction for a call for service, a traffic stop, the camera shall remain on. So, and those are reviewed as well by the first line supervisors. So we look through those to obviously ensure compliance, but also to learn and train. You know, we're on a constant journey to continuous improvement. I saw the mention in there about seeing cases recently of cops escalating. I would suggest that I think we just have more recordings of it now. And I would say that likely there are more police interactions where de-escalation is occurring, but we see the ones and they get the attention that are escalating. You know, I can tell you that our officers, they do a phenomenal job. And I'm never, you know, I can admit, as Eric and Issa have said, you know, law enforcement has an ugly past, and we still see things today that are absolutely horrific and not acceptable in this profession. But an overwhelming majority of police officers and interactions that occur across this country every day are very positive in comparison. So I like to highlight that as well, so that's not forgotten, because those are often not witnessed or seen every single day. And it's the negative interactions, the ones that are escalating, that are captured on video, that are routinely shown. So we do as Eric said as well, you know, our basic training for our officers. Then we do mandatory in-service training. And then at the district station level as well, we do training on a sometimes monthly, quarterly basis, which surrounds de-escalation and various other law enforcement proficiencies to keep our officers sharp. So if you are stopped or you have an interaction with a law enforcement officer and you do not feel that you were treated appropriately, or that something wasn't right, or you have questions, you know, I encourage you to either ask the officer, but also you can follow up with the first line supervisor and request to speak with a supervisor, whether it's at the scene or come to the station and speak with a supervisor. And many times they're able to explain in further detail what had maybe taken place, and they provide an explanation. However, if you do want to file a complaint, you know, it doesn't matter. You can email a complaint, you can call in a complaint, you can hand deliver a complaint, you can anonymously send it in. We have an internal affairs bureau that's located out of our headquarters, which reports directly to the chief of police as well. And they conduct a lot of department-wide investigations, but also we conduct internal investigations at the station. So if a administrative investigation for an allegation of wrongdoing is commenced and started, a thorough and impartial investigation is completed, and they review body-worn camera footage, in-car video footage, the reports. They interview all parties that are involved, all witnesses, and get the full picture of everything that has happened. And then they make a determination, was there a violation of policy? And if so, they make that recommendation. And if not, and it's the officer was in compliance with their actions, they indicate that as well. That's then forwarded to me as the station commander, and I conduct a thorough review of that investigation to ensure that it was thorough and complete. And I either concur or disagree with the finding, and then make a recommendation of discipline and or additional training that is needed, or if the officer was in compliance as well, concur with that, and then the case is logged and documented. I then forward that case to our patrol bureau major, which is located at headquarters. He does the same review, and I tell you this process just so I can emphasize how thorough it is. And after he does a review of the process, he concurs with my review. Then it goes to the deputy chief of police, and then ultimately the chief of police. Once it goes through that entire review process, a letter is drafted, signed by the chief of police, which goes out to the complainant and advises them the findings of the investigation. If they have further questions, they're welcome to contact the commander that conducted the review on there, or the two additional options which are available here in Fairfax County and explained there. You're able to contact the independent police auditor, which is a county employee out of the government center that reports to the board of supervisors, or you can report it to the civilian review panel, which also is a group made up of community members that report to the board of supervisors. So those are additional layers to have a case reviewed, and they will look at the investigation to ensure that it was done thorough and that there were no issues and that they concur with it. like I said, there are times where we do make mistakes, and as the other officers had mentioned, we are not perfect. And we learn from those. We try to learn from those opportunities, ensure that we are doing better. But I can tell you, our agency, with best practices across the country, you see a lot of these law enforcement agencies now that are changing their policies, removing the chokeholds, removing shooting from vehicles, so many things that, emphasizing the de-escalation, the duty to intervene. Those have been in our policy since 2015 here in Fairfax County. We had several agencies review our policies. We do a co-production model with policy development, which includes the community, police officers, the county attorney's office, academic partners as well, to ensure that what we have in place is to protect the sanctity of human life, to have positive interactions with law enforcement, and ensure that we have the necessary oversight to ensure that we are doing our part to have deliver ethical police service to the community. So a few things that I wanted to touch on, though. We're fortunate in the Franconia District Station specifically that, our top 3 complaints I would say that I receive in my office are traffic complaints, speeding, stop sign violations in communities, vehicles being broken into, and parking complaints. Those are the 3 major complaints that we get on a regular basis that come into the office. So our officers are generally deployed out and focusing on that. And I can say in our 51 square miles as well, we are crimes down 25% this year. We have the greatest decrease in crime across the county this year. And that is 100% due to the great work of the officers and the engagement, honestly, from our community. As I mentioned, community policing, some of the things Eric's going to talk about, one of the new programs that we have launched recently, which I hope many of you, whether you have an interest in law enforcement or not, or you don't even like cops, I would ask and urge that you please join us in this, because I think some of the things that we have in our mind will help further answer some of these questions, give you experiences that you would not otherwise see. We have great involvement, but the youth and young adults in our community and is somewhere where I felt that we were lacking and that we can improve on. So hopefully you consider joining the program that Eric is going to talk about. So hopefully I answered, kind of gave you the outline of the oversight that takes place. And so you know that if there's a complaint made or you have a question, it is taken very seriously. It's thoroughly investigated and looked into, and you get a response to the outcome of that complaint that is made.
Thank you, Captain Freed. Just a couple questions that have come in, if you can just expound in more detail. What is the process to hold quote unquote bad officers accountable? So let's say during that monthly audit of car video or body cam, there's something that officer has done something that is not in accordance with procedure or training. What sort of review is undertaken to hold that officer accountable? That's the first part of the question. Another question that we're getting in is that those stops where the officer has not approached in a professional manner. That he or she comes to the car with an attitude, comes to the car angry, comes to the car, in a position that's aggressive. Can you touch on those 2 things about how we can help the community address those issues?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. And one other thing that I have a note here, we're very fortunate. Supervisor Rodney Lusk, who is our lead district supervisor now, he's the chair of the public safety subcommittee. So we've had the pleasure of having great dialogue with Rodney surrounding the discussion of, reinvention of policing and to ensure that we're doing the right things here in Fairfax County. So that's another area where you can be engaged in discussion with him. Anyway, to answer those questions, number one, there's a range of issues that could take place. An overwhelming majority of the officers follow the policy. There are minor things that could take place, and I give you an example. At the beginning of their shift, the officer is required to do a test to ensure that their camera's working. Even when they turn their camera off at the conclusion of a traffic stop or an event, and they have to label the thing correctly. Sometimes it's a typo or something like that, and it may be incorrectly labeled. Things like that, we do remedial reminders. We document if it's a persistent thing. If there are violations of policy that we would witness, we would initiate an investigation. If there are training issues that we witness, we have a discussion with the officer because, again, we want to make sure that the officer's safe. We want to make sure that everyone involved, community member, whether it's someone stopped on a traffic stop, people that are passing by, whether it's directing traffic, we can look at it from a training issue. So when you talk about discipline, we have the ability to give what is called a substandard performance, something that could be considered a training issue, if you will, all the way up to termination of employment. So it just depends on the severity. It depends on the discipline history. We follow progressive discipline in the county as well. So these are all things that are factored into my decision making when I'm reviewing these or working with a first line supervisor to follow the best course of action. What was the second part of that question?
Specific officer conduct.
Yeah,
I think we're going over that. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you approach a vehicle, and I think Officer Martin said it, the officers, required by policy to identify themselves, tell the operator the reason for the stop. And if the officer doesn't do that, or if they don't do it in a professional manner, certainly that's something that can be reported. And in our general orders, which are available online as well, it details exactly what is expected of an officer when they do conduct a traffic stop. Now, there are circumstances where things may be happening or unfolding so quickly that it may not flow exactly like that, but maybe because, they say, hey, can you pull over up here a little bit? And then they reapproach and have that discussion. But for the most part, absolutely, an officer's supposed to identify themselves, tell them the reason for the stop. That's a great piece that he had said earlier, Officer Martin, and full disclosure, something that drives me absolutely, bonkers when you see, why am I under arrest? Well, we'll tell you in a second. No, absolutely not. If we are to place somebody under arrest, we're going to tell you right there why you're under arrest.
And can I just step in real quick? Just to piggyback on what the captain said about the original question, what do you do as a driver if the officer is a little aggressive? Was that the question?
Correct. More than a little aggressive.
Okay. So when I spoke earlier, I said that, we don't know if you guys had a bad day, right? We don't know what was going on prior to the stop. So believe it or not, when we take our uniforms off, we're just like you guys, we're human, right? And unfortunately, sometimes officers are having a bad day, and this is not an excuse. We are supposed to be able to regulate and check ourselves if we're having a bad day, to try to limit our interaction, if possible, until we're able to, have a cooler head. Now, in a perfect storm happens, and the officer just had an argument with someone on the phone, a loved one, or they're not feeling well, and I have my lights on, and this person decides, hey, I don't feel safe here. I want to drive 5 miles, to a parking lot, and I'm going to do it going 10 miles an hour, or I'm going to, whatever the case may be. And that officer is frustrated, just pull over. What are you doing? Just pull over. And that officer does not check himself or herself prior to getting out of the vehicle. And they approach that vehicle and they do everything wrong. They don't explain why they were pulled over. They introduce themselves. And the first thing out of their mouth is, what are you doing? Why did you do this? Or whatever the case may be, right? The same discretion that, and the same empathy that I give my traffic stops, if they're angry with me, I get it. You're mad. I stopped you from doing whatever it is you're doing today. I get you're angry, right? I don't personalize it. You're angry at the situation. It's the same empathy that I would ask that a driver have with an officer, okay? Now, we are held to a higher standard. I get it. We're trained not to have bad moments. I get it. But we live in this place called reality. Sometimes people have bad moments. and I can't make it any better than that. It happens. If that happens, the best thing to do, okay, is to comply with the traffic stop. You make sure you get that officer's name. You make sure you ask for a business card, a badge number, something to identify that officer, okay, what station he works for. And when that officer pulls off, I suggest you get on the phone and you call that station, okay, and you make a report, because those types of officers who do that on a routine basis, they make it so much more difficult and more dangerous for myself and other officers who try to the best of our ability for that not to happen. So instead of changing your whole perception about all law enforcement, hey, that officer just pulled me over was whatever, I hate all cops, you have a recourse, okay? File a complaint. And believe it or not, they get followed up on. You know, the captain, our second lieutenant, our first lieutenant, all of our supervisors are very diligent and following up on citizen complaints. So to answer your question in a nutshell, comply. Please do not become combative. That officer is 100% categorically wrong. I'm not taking up for him, but what I'm telling you is that only bad things will happen. That's even, and I don't care if that's in law enforcement with a traffic stop or if that's just two civilians. If someone walks up to you in the supermarket having a bad day and starts mouthing off, don't engage. It's hard, but only bad things happen. Someone, cooler heads have to prevail, and someone has to have a moment of clarity to either say this is going bad, or I'm allow them to do whatever it is they're doing, and I'm going to follow up with a legal recourse.
And keep it on track with that. Officers having that bad day, keep in mind when that light bar goes on, that light comes on, the in-car video is coming on also.
Absolutely.
All that is
100%.
captured. So you do have someone on your side. It's not he said, she said. The video will clearly just show exactly what took place. So just do as he says, as Officer Martin and the captain said. Just do as they say. You can file a grievance later. Just go with the flow for right now and just deal with it later. You do have recourse.
Thank you. We have a couple questions that have come in. This is for any one of the officers who want to answer this. The question is, with respect to requesting a supervisor, watch commander to come, do you still have to comply with an officer's request or order up until that supervisor arrives? So if I'm, don't like the officer's conduct, or don't like his attitude, I request a supervisor to come. At that point, can I wait until that supervisor arrives before I comply? Or in the interim, do I still have to comply with that officer's direction?
If the approach is egregious, where the officer is totally out of control, and you want to wait, that's fine. But it's best to go ahead and proceed on with the traffic stop, because that supervisor may not be available for a while, may be tied up on another event. Deal with it now and address the issue at a later date, or right after the traffic stop, come to the station and wait for the supervisor there. But the best course of action is to go ahead and comply at that time.
Yeah, and to add even further, as mentioned earlier, I don't have the authority to tell an officer that they shall write a ticket or they shall make an arrest here. If someone disagrees with the fact that they were speeding or they ran a stop sign, even if that complaint comes in, the disposition for that is taken care of in the court. So if you disagree with the reason why you were stopped, you can certainly make that complaint known, but just by requesting a supervisor wouldn't change that outcome. They would still issue a ticket, and it would be up to a judge in the court to make the determination whether or not there was probable cause for that.
Thank you. I have a question for Officer Jones. Just as a young officer on the force, what are some of the potential, I won't call them issues or problems, but what are some of things that you see among our youth and teen drivers in this patrol area?
He's muted.
There you go. You should be unmuted now.
Sorry about that. It was still muted. Some of the biggest issues I see among some of our youth and teen drivers are speed. Speed's the biggest issue that I found between them. Everybody's got a place to be, especially when you're young. And same thing with me when I was in high school driving around. You got a place to be. You want to get there quick, and you want to get there now. The biggest issue I see is just kind of a lead foot. Young guys on the gas too much, that can get you in trouble really quickly. That's probably the biggest issue I see. Some recklessness on turning on red lights, stuff like that. It's just impatience, and that impatience is something that you have when you're young. I can relate to that, being out of high school just a few years ago.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Will, I think at this time, I think it'd be a good idea to open it up for some questions.
Yes, if there's any questions that have not been answered and that you feel that are pressing, please let's go ahead and ask them now. I can unmute you so that you can ask the question, or you can send it in the chat and we will monitor it also. And if we finish up and there's still a question that you may have, please feel free to email Officer Nelson. We'll provide his email, and then hopefully he can get back to you directly. Or Officer Freed, please. Captain Freed, sorry.
There we go. Any questions from the participants that you want to ask any of our officer representatives this evening?
While you do that, I saw one earlier about recruiting in our diversity on the agency. It's obviously, it's a key point, critical goal for the chief to have the agency mirror the community for which we serve. When he was appointed chief, he started his diversity council on recruitment for Caucasian and African American officers. We are at a good point in comparison to the population data. Still continuous improvement. Where we fall short are with Asian officers. And that's something that certainly we are trying to make progress with. But we are also trying to recruit in the county, people that live in Fairfax County. They do what they call the Fairfax First Initiative. Officer Martin is one of the recruiting ambassadors. And we do, our agency does recruiting events throughout the county at different locations. They've done several at Springfield Town Center, which have been successful. Just folks walking through the town center one day, and our recruiting folks happen to be there, and they can apply right there on the spot. And then several months later, they're graduating from the academy. So if you have anyone that is interested, please, we want people that live in Fairfax County that know this community to be a part of this agency.
Captain Freed.
Thank you.
Approximately, what is the percentage diversity makeup? I know you probably don't know it over all of Fairfax County, but can you give us the Franconia makeup?
Actually, I could tell you the department.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think for, like I said, African American, it's the population I think is 9.7%, and I think we're at around 8% as an agency. For Asian, I think the county population is around 19%, and I think we're around like 5 or 6 as an agency. And for Caucasian, obviously, we're in the 60s and percentage community and around that as well as an agency. And that's off the top of my head. I have my the numbers over there in my bag, but I think that's pretty close to the numbers currently.
And I think I see another question that I think is important. How often are the cops that patrol a certain area living in that area also? Is that something that is encouraged or discouraged from the department?
That's a great question. And I think it's something that is encouraged. Unfortunately, the last number that we had, only 29% of our agency lived in Fairfax County. I had a conversation with Supervisor Luss the other day about this topic. This has been an ongoing conversation. Obviously, we know it's very expensive to live in Fairfax County, especially on a police officer salary or a public servant salary. So I think the county is looking at opportunities to provide, to encourage further public safety and public servants to be able to live in the community. And I will say, certainly, I could be the first to admit it. I come from Western Pennsylvania, right outside of Pittsburgh, worked in the community where I was born and raised, and you have that passion. It's in your fabric. And I would suggest that if officers lived in this county, if they raised their families here, their kids went to school here, you probably would see a greater investment from their heart. And I'm not saying that our officers don't give that, so please don't confuse that. But I think we can certainly, when it's our neighborhood and our kids are going to school here, I think it certainly elevates it to a different level.
Great, thank you very much. I don't see any more questions, any hands raised. So as we begin to wrap up, Officer Nelson, Captain Freed had mentioned there's a program that you wanted to talk about in terms of recruitment and involvement with Fairfax County Police. Can you give an overview on that, please?
We are coming into what we call the Franconia Police Station Youth Engagement Council. We have two groups, one from 18 to 25, and the other group is for the high schoolers. We're trying to get the young group to have a voice, to be able to voice their concerns and things they'd like to see happen in the community. Through this council, you'll be able to engage with the police department. You'll be engaged to other agencies within the county that can help you get your question taken care of. We have connection with Supervisor Lusk. If you got a question that's for the supervisors, that we can get that question answered for you. So this is a good start to get you started, to have a voice, to have if a question is burning or you want to be involved. The Youth Council is a good way to get started. You can also email if you desire to find out more about it. We seek to provide an opportunity of listening, discussion, education, and to identify the issues. So if you feel that you have a voice and you want to be heard and want to continue this conversation on different levels, please email me, eric.nelson@fairfaxcounty.gov. I'll be glad to get you signed up and continue these conversations.
Yeah, and we hope with that to provide activities, training, different opportunities. One thing that comes to mind, in one of our other district stations did it recently. We have a use of force simulator. Most people, as mentioned earlier, us using force is never pretty, and it's something that we never want to do. But it's something that does occur. So we have a use of force simulator. We have a training staff, and we hope to bring that out to have the staff have a further in detail discussion and have community members, youth, go through the use of force simulator to kind of get a little bit of an idea, to walk in the shoes there, just to see how quickly in split seconds things can unfold.
Thank you for that. Just want to be mindful of the time now. We're just about at an hour and 20 minutes. So if there are no more questions, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the representatives from the Franconia station for joining us. Again, for the families and students that have joined us this evening, there's an agenda that went out that had the 10 points of the talk. That went out. It went out on social media from Hayfield as well as on email. If you want a copy of that agenda, it has a link to the PBS short story that talks about elements of the talk. You can email Officer Nelson and we'll get that to you as well. I want to take this opportunity again to thank everyone for joining us. Again, I want to press upon everyone, this is not the end of the conversation. This is just the beginning. So hopefully as we navigate through this COVID pandemic, we'll have an opportunity to come back again with our officers, our local officers, and continue to foster that relationship, community partnership, accountability, and transparency. So I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. And again, if you have any questions, you can email Officer Nelson. His email address has been provided in the chat. And then we'll look to do something again here in the not too distant future. So again, our goal is to make sure that all of our children make it home safely, as well as the officers. And again, we do appreciate your time for being with us this evening. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.